Recently I was at the art center and my friend Debbie came up to me and asked me, "Do you always paint your skies blue?" And it stopped me in my tracks. But I answered and said, "Well, yes, unless it's a sunrise, sunset, or cloudy day. Why do you ask?" She asked me, "Well, is that art?" And I thought, what is she driving at? So I said, "Tell me more. I'm not following you." And she said, "Well, we as plain art artists paint what we see, right? If the sky is blue, we paint it blue. But are there other options?" And I thought, I just didn't know what she meant. I said, "Tell me more." So she pulled her phone out and showed me screenshots she had taken of different pieces of artwork where the skies weren't blue. She showed me pink skies, purple skies, green skies. I mean, this was by Vincent van Gogh was a green sky over a green field, and it worked. I said, "Oh, I get what you mean now," and I wouldn't have thought about it because that's his style. But yeah, that does open up some possibilities. So that's what I'm going to paint in today's video, this winter scene, and I'm not going to paint the sky blue. So let's see how that goes. I've started with my drawing, and I've mixed up my paint. So this is a combination of Cobalt Blue, Winsor Violet, and Hansa Yellow Medium. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to paint in the sky, and then I'm going to paint in the shadows with my brush. And I'm going to blot the edges so that they blend a little bit. There are some clouds in this sky. And I'm going to go ahead, the house in this photo, as you see, is a brown color. And I'm just going to go ahead and use this purple. And I'll probably change that a little bit later. And because most of the snow is in shadow, not all of it, I can just paint over this fence right here without a problem. Just put a little shadow on part of the snow that is away from the sun. Now I've got back here, I've got some fairly white snow, so I really do need to leave that alone. Before I get too far, and while things are still wet, I'm going to drop in just a little bit of burnt sienna because there's a little bit of foliage over here, and I want to get that in as a suggestion of foliage while it's still wet. For now, I'm going to concentrate on the shadow that's coming from this tree on the right. Alright, I am going to switch brushes. So this is a liner brush. This is a Davinci Casaneo size 12. And it's got a very soft tip, and so it bends over easily. And when that happens, you get unexpected and unanticipated shapes. And I really like that. And so for me, it helps me get effects that look more natural. So here's the roof line of the house, but there's no separation between it and the sky. This is a snow-covered roof, and right now the sky is white. What I'll do is I'll suggest some trees, and the way I can do that is just by putting in some clean water and then coming back with a gray color. So a way you can make gray is to start with a bluish or purplish color. I'm going to drop in some burnt sienna. You could also use burnt umber or raw umber. The painting has dried, and now I'm getting ready to work on the next layer, which is to add in some trees and to start to darken some of these values. I'm going to take a similar approach to these trees over here. There's a lot more detail, but I would like to get some suggestion of branches in the distance. And there's a line of trees behind this property. In this case, I do think I want to use some raw umber. I want to make it a little bit cooler because to put things in the distance, you want cooler colors. Warmer colors pull things forward for the viewer, cooler colors push things back. And I just want this to sort of drop in. The trees come down a little ways. That's what I'm depicting through the fence. Now a little bit of raw umber. The color in between the rungs of the fence have dried, but I do want some suggestion of green in it. I don't want it very dark because the day that I took these photos was right after the snowfall, and so the trees had a lot of snow on them still, and a light gray color can suggest that the trees are, if the trees look a lot lighter in the distance than they do normally, say you're in the middle of the winter, there are no leaves on the trees, it's not snowy, your branches are going to be darker. With a little bit of snow on them, they're going to look lighter. I'm getting a pattern here from the purple, which is fine, but I just wanted to blend in the raw umber a little bit. And this is a shrub. I'm using raw umber, and I'll go back with a little bit of shadow green. But it's just not much saturation, I should say. That these colors are very muted, and I'm working with a limited palette anyway. While that is drying, I'm going to start to bring in some more value in the house. I'm going to use raw umber. And that's pretty flat. I may drop in some other color to liven it up a little bit. So yeah, maybe I'll just go ahead and add in a little more of the purple I had mixed up earlier. And this tree is sort of interesting because there's not going to be much separation in value with the tree versus the color of the house, since the house is dark. And I'm debating a little bit about the color of the fence. The fence is actually dark, but I'm thinking now maybe it would be better to keep it light. So I'm going to go in that direction. This is an Escoda brand brush. These are Kolinsky Sable. I got them many, many years ago. They're virtually not affordable anymore. And I'm going to have a video that covers these brushes so you can better understand them and decide, do you want to go ahead and spend the money on these? They are very nice. Or spend money on the Davinci Casaneo, which is still not cheap. Having a couple sizes is good because you will get into these situations where you've got to have a thinner brush to get some of these details. And this is also where I get impatient. I can only do this for so long. This is why I'm always looking for tricks that make it a little easier, a little faster to mimic nature without having to paint every little branch. Still trying to seem random, and it's an effort to get the details in, get the sense in, or have a suggestion of details, really is what I'm thinking. I'm going to try a little experiment where I put some water down to work on the trees, because there are a lot of trees on this left side, and so some of my marks will become blurred and some of my marks will stay sharp. I want to see what that does. So I'm going to use this big liner brush, and I'm going to try to put more water at what I think are the edges so I get some blurring. Wow, it looks like I might need to mix some more of that purple. Now these shrubs I thought were just a little too light. So this is just shadow green. And that's going on pretty strong. I'm going to put a little detail here. I don't want all of it to be detailed, but just a little bit. And that hopefully will help show off that roof edge a little bit. So I see where I could add in a little more gray here. That's to show that there's foliage in the back of the yard of this particular property. But now well, now this one not so much. That is still in shadow. And this one is mostly in shadow. But these are pure white, so what I need to do is, if I'm going to keep it white, is I'm going to have to make, for these white rungs to look different from the white snow, they're going to have to be darker than the snow. Okay, I'm ready to put in some more definition here on the trees. I'm going to try my larger liner brush. I'm actually going to use this periwinkle that I was talking about earlier. And the reason is because in these branches here is that the snow is actually in shadow, so it's not white. So I'm going to fill my brush up, and oh, that's dark. And I may add some white. I can see some white as well. But there definitely is some shadow. And this brush is just too heavily loaded is what's going on. Now this, I think one of the reasons why I'm seeing a lot of this color I kind of forgot this. We'd had an ice storm. So it had snowed a lot, like, I don't know, 6 inches for us. I mean, there were other places in this state where they got 8 inches of snow. And then it warmed up and we had freezing rain overnight. And so there was ice all over everything. But then when the sun came out, it was beautiful. So I went out for a walk after all that and took lots of pictures. This is Dr. P.H. Martin's Bleed Proof White. And before I learned about this, I had tried tube whites, I had tried gouache, and they always seem to fade. This doesn't fade. It's so thick when it comes in the jar, I have to add water to use it. So it's strong stuff. There is some snow that's on these branches, and so I'm trying to put this right next to the periwinkle that I just put down. Well, that probably should be periwinkle instead. Let's see, I don't need it in a whole lot of places. So wherever there's a branch that's sort of laying at an angle or horizontal or in the V of a branch, that's where you'll tend to see the snow lie on a branch. Depending on the nature of the snowstorm, the snow might be on the side of a fairly vertical trunk, but you don't always see that. And the other thing you can do is if you haven't defined all of your branches, you can define some of your branches just as these white branches. You don't have to put a dark branch down first and then the white. So I'm going to do that. I'm just going to put in a bunch of branches just in white. Now this is a little diluted, so this is drying kind of faded, which might be fine, but sometimes I like it to be strong. And again, it's going to be really easy to get caught up in this and really go for every last detail, when one of the things I've been trying to do these last several years is do what Joseph Zbukvic says. He says, don't state, indicate. But I also don't see him paint snow scenes either. Maybe he has, but I generally don't see him paint snow scenes. Now that I've let the painting sit overnight, I've come back to it with somewhat fresh eyes, and I think this edge on this building is a little too hard. So what I'd like to do is I'm going to put in some shrubbery to try to get it to blend with the midground. The other thing is that I lost the reflections on this, I think it's a window on this house. I'm not sure. This house has some unusual features, and I don't like this window either. So I'm going to change all this to be probably a wide paned window. So I'm trying to lift up this window a little bit. You can see there's a lot of value here, and that's of course moving all the other pigment around. So, and I didn't want to get a lot darker than what I had, but I may have to get a little bit darker to compensate for that. So I did say I want to change that window. I just really need to get rid of these features. Winsor Violet's a staining color, and that's why I'm having some troubles lifting the pigment. So I'm going to use the magic eraser, and hopefully it won't damage the paper. This is a paper that's This is Baohong. It's almost as good as Arches. Well, I don't say that it's as good. I feel like it's as good. I haven't worked with it enough to absolutely know that. So you can use the magic eraser to lift pigment down to the white of the paper. Now with the staining colors, it's not going to get all of it. It'll get a lot of it. With the non-staining colors, you can get down to the white. I'm going to do this side too because I do want that edge to blend eventually. So hopefully this will work out. I'm trying not to disturb the fence. Just starting with some light color. It's a little bit wet here because I used the magic eraser. In fact, I'm going to drop in some shadow green. And then that way we've got some shadow green in more than one place. So you can see I've lifted out a lot of the pigment and I've drawn in a window. And I'm going to paint around that. And then I will put in the highlights. So I'm going to have to paint over the whole thing because this paint, because I have a lot of raw umber in it, and raw umber does not stick to the paper well. So it's going to lift as I work with it. So it's better to, got a little too much purple again. It's better just go ahead and paint over the whole thing. And that's not blending the way I want, which is the whole reason that I started this, so I could get the colors to blend. That's awfully purple. Alright, I'm going to smush that edge. Well, that's not smushing the edge. There we go. There, now that's a little bit more of a suggestion rather than a strict indication. Come on, paintbrush. Although I do kind of like how this purple is melding around. And I'll darken this too. Sometimes I go back and I do these fixes, and later on I think, oh, I shouldn't have done that. And some people even tell me that. Oh, I liked it the way it was. See, one of the things I wanted to do is, because I've got this shrub that should be sort of around the corner of this building, that there probably would be shrubs underneath the window as well. So that is some of what I want to do, is put in some shrubs, even though there weren't any in my reference. Oh, and it's just getting more and more interesting as we go along. Alright, it doesn't have to be perfectly defined. I'm going to try to take this out. There we go. Now for the windows, I think what I need to do is wait for the house to dry, or blow dry it, because these windows, I'm imagining, are encased in white, and that's not white. But they're in shadow, so they would be a shadow color. Well, this light purple is our shadow color. I'm starting to work on the windows now. I've put in a little bit of the purple color, the same color that I used for the clouds, as the colors of the outlines of the windows, because they should be white. Should be about the same color as these posts. I don't think it's going to turn out that way, but it'll be pretty close. And then just putting in a little bit of the shadow in the way the window is built. You'll see a little bit of shadow. And then for most window scenes, the inside in the window, you don't necessarily see inside. Now, if there were lights on, you might have, some glow. I'm not going to do that. So I'm just going to put in some dark color, and in the original photo there were some reflections, and I'm just going to try to put in some reflections, and they would be reflecting the snow. So it'll be a little uneven. Sometimes in windows you'll see reflections on some windows, and others you'll see a lot less. And I'm just sort of making this up. You know, especially during the day, people don't have the lights on, so you wouldn't necessarily see inside their windows. And I think I need to add a little more value to that to give the sense that it really is dark inside the house relative to outside. So we'll see if that helps it recover. You know, I wanted to get this to fade into the mid-ground a little bit, and hopefully overall it's a stronger composition. Here's the scene without a blue sky using a limited palette.